Hey everybody, it's Ron in LA back for another edition of Ask Ron. Got a lot of questions this week, so we're going to jump right in. We got two from Tim Barnes in New York.
Hey Tim.
Tim asks, or says, I was told by another real estate guru that you can only do lease options up to 5 years, but Ron has said that he does them for 10 to 20 years. Could you clarify?
I didn't say I do them 10 to 20 years, Tim. That's not what I said. What I said was I let the buyer to tell me how long they want to do them, but remember, I don't care if I cash out on the back end or not. So you gotta get behind the mind of the entrepreneur and what their needs are. If in fact I want to push to cash out, then I would generally do them for 1 year at a time. If I don't care, I'll let the buyer tell me 2, 3, 4, 5 years. 10 years only is an axe deal when it's over leveraged. It's probably what you heard. So we lease option it from the seller with a 10-year lease, and then we assign that to the buyer. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So honestly, I don't know what your question is concerning that. We do those on over-leveraged houses, but honestly, the number of over-leveraged houses seem to get less and less and less as time goes on. But there's nothing wrong with that. Now in Texas, lease option that long is an executory contract, but remember the seller is exempt anyway, so you're assigning a contract from the seller to the buyer, so it's irrelevant. It's a moot point. So nothing's stopping you from doing that if you want to. But again, I would never put a tenant buyer in a house that I control or own that I intend to stay in on a 10-year lease. It would be shorter leases, and then I'll decide at that time whether to renew them or not when the term is up if they haven't bought.
Tim also asks if he can list a property with a realtor if he's not the owner but has the property under contract.
Absolutely not, Tim. Absolutely not. You could if you had the owner's permission, and you darn sure better get that in writing, but that's the only way you can do it.
Okay, Dean in Nebraska says, you endorse 2 IRAs, Equity and Quest. Can they both do the Coverdell Education Fund?
Any IRA administrator can do the CSAS, Coverdell Educational Savings Account, yes. And honestly, I use Quest now. I used Equity for a long time. It doesn't make any difference to me which one you use. Either one of them will get the job done.
Do you have another one to endorse?
No.
Okay. Kevin Roberts in California has a deal.
Good old Kevin.
He says, I put a home under contract under my entity, and the purchase amount is for my entity is $200,000. Then I found another entity to assign the contract to.
Okay.
My closing with the seller, however, is not until the 5th of June.
Right.
Is it possible for me to expect the entity I want to assign this contract to pay the assignment fee now?
No. You can't get the assignment fee till you actually close, but you most certainly can get a non-refundable deposit toward the assignment fee. And in your case, get $5,000. Get whatever the buyer will give you. If they will give it to you, take it. However, be careful now, Kevin. If something goes wrong along the way that is out of your control, for example, let's say your seller waffles on you or something, you've got to come up with that money and give it back to that buyer. So it's a very dangerous thing to take that money and go do something with it and then not be able to have it back in case something happened and you needed it. And don't forget to check the title too now. Before you go taking money from a buyer or very shortly thereafter, check the title to make sure that you can deliver good title to that person you're assigning it to, because I'd hate to get to June and then you decide to check the title and find out you got crappy title, and in that case you do not want to take that person's $35,000, putting them in a position to where they have crappy title and probably will come back and involve you in a lawsuit. So get all you can out of them if they're willing to give it to you, but normally when you assign a contract you get paid when the buyer closes.
Okay, our next question is from Vanita Robinson in Pennsylvania.
Hey, Vanita.
She says she's back again and she's got a deal.
I didn't know she left. All right.
We have a 3-bed, 3-bath in New Jersey with no repairs needed, and the after-repair value of $270.
Okay.
She's asking $264.
Okay.
The seller is not willing to go below $255 due to mortgage. She thinks it's a possible axe deal and could offer the seller $9K to leave financing in place and locate buyer willing to pay a nice down payment. But do you think that sounds feasible?
Well, you didn't tell me whether it was a lease option or not, so I'm going to assume that it is. And yeah, you can put it under contract where the seller gets $9,000 down at the time you install the tenant buyer. But I got to tell you, that's not, I mean, it really doesn't matter because it is an axe deal. And you put it under contract or anything you want. Now when you go find the tenant buyer, you can either accept the amount they're giving you, or you can go back and renegotiate it anyway. For example, let's say you found a tenant buyer and they only had 15,000 bucks. I would go back to the seller and say, I got some good news and got some bad news. Good news is I think I got a qualified buyer you'll like. He's got 15,000 bucks and you'll lease option the property, make your payment like we discussed. Bad news is I'm going to take 7,500 and you're going to take 7,500. And honestly, if that's not going to work for you, I'm going to take this buyer and put him in another property. The seller will do what you ask him to do when there's a bird in the hand rather than a bird in the bush. So put on the contract for whatever the seller wants. If it's reasonable, go find buyer, then go back and renegotiate if the situation dictates.
Okay, our next question is from Vic Martinez in Texas.
Hey, Vic.
He's wondering if you have a contract available for lease options in Texas.
I do not, Vic. You're going to have the special lease option contracts. Now, coming up on May the 8th, I'm going to do a webinar with John Jackson, who does have these contracts. He will be offering them on that webinar. I don't know what his price is, but it's very, very small, especially compared to what he paid to get these things done. But they're not my contracts, they're his contracts. So as of now, we do not have contracts for lease options in Texas. But beyond that May the 8th webinar, we'll be sending all Texans on our list an invitation to it. And gosh, if you're going to live in Texas and do lease options, that's an absolute must, because we're going to show you how to do it and do it correctly and legally and why it's legal. And then again, he will offer you the contracts.
Okay, 2 questions from Curtis Cunningham in Ohio.
Hey, Curtis.
First question is, when you're analyzing multi-units, which method do you prefer to use when making the decision? And does it change from a 2-unit to 4-unit and up?
I'm not sure what you mean by what method, Curtis. If it's a 2-unit or a 4-unit, I analyze it just like I would a house as far as comps goes, but it's still got to have good cash flow. When you're analyzing apartment complexes, much larger than that, then you're going to use the math, and they're going to be, the value is going to be determined by the net operating income, and that's the only way the value can be determined. However, with your small units, you got to first tell me what is it you're trying to accomplish. The cash flow on those small units needs to be good, because they're going to be the largest pain in the neck as far as what kind of properties do you want to operate that involve tenants. And 2 and 3 and 4 units, they're okay for cash flow, but you know, you can't lease option one of those. You can't pass the repairs on to the buyer. Honestly, I don't care for them myself. I'd rather have single family houses or apartment complexes where I can put management in place. But as to how to analyze them, it's still going to be based on cash flow as far as I'm concerned. And I mean real cash flow now, not pie in the sky numbers on paper. You need to get to the bottom of what the real expenses are and deal with reality, and not force the numbers to make the thing work. It needs to have a great monthly positive cash flow, or you should not have any interest in it, unless you're just flipping it to a landlord.
His next question is, what kind of ROI do you like to get, and what's a good ROI minimum to start with?
Well, again, that's in the eye of the holder. I don't know. I'm not. If I'm in it for the ROI, I'm not doing 2 or 3 units. I can tell you that. I can get a bigger ROI on a single-family house than you're ever going to get on a 3 or 4 unit like that, simply because I can buy them so cheap. By the time I put lease option tenant buyers in there, and on work for equity deals, and then if I borrow the money on a private loan, on top of that, my ROI is infinity. Infinity is by far my favorite ROI, which means I have no money in it, so I can't measure my rate of return. And gosh, it's easy to get 30, 40, 50, 60% annual rates of return with these low-end cheap houses, which, by the way, I'm going to be discussing on my work for equity simulcast coming up on April the 30th. So you guys be on the lookout for that. I'll show you what my favorite exit strategies for those low-end things are. Again, I just don't like these small multifamilies because I can't get those multi-thousand-dollar lease option deposits, and I can't pass the repairs on to the tenant buyer. If you bypass both of those things are what makes your ROI outrageous. I mean, it's just outrageous, and I just can't get those on 3 or 4 units. I can get a monthly cash flow, but I'm never going to get the kind of ROIs that I would like out of that unit.
Okay, Ron, that's all the questions we have this
That's
week.
all?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, gosh.
Don't forget, guys, that we have Ron's live monthly Q&A coming up this Monday, April 14th at 7 p.m.
Wow, is that coming up already? Seems
Yes,
like
sir.
I just did my last one.
To join the call, dial 712-432-5480 shortly before 7 p.m. and enter 99525#. Gold Club members have interactive access and should use the access code found on the homepage of your Gold Club website. Don't forget, Gold Club members, you can fax in as many property information sheets as you wish, and Ron will work through them on your call. Fax them in no later than 3 on Monday to 888-840-8385.
I'm sure they got all of that, Elliot. Okay,
We'll put
guys.
it in the comments.
Good thing about videos, you can punch replay. All right. Listen, don't forget that April 30th simulcast coming up now. Set aside that time. I think I'm doing it from 2 to 5 in the afternoon Eastern Standard Time, and I'm preparing for it now. It's going to be a really good one. It's my favorite exit strategy by far. When you talk about ROIs, you wait till you see the ROIs on these things. So I'll see you next week. Don't forget to send me property information sheets now if you want to get on that call. I go over them on that call, and only members will be able to participate. So if you're a non-member watching this, it'd be a great time to go to Ron's Gold Club and get to be a Gold Club member. Guys, we're adding a bunch of cool stuff to the Gold Club. If you're not a member, you might as well just get over it and get on with it and go get in it for $59 a month. Are you kidding me? This is the best bargain in real estate today. So go get to be a member, and you can take advantage of the full advantages that we offer, not just this weekly newsletter. See you soon.